If you want to know if your training's working, are you getting results? That's it. Like, you want to get a heavier squat, okay, your program should do that for you. So basically, you have to have a way to gauge the progress you're making.
Welcome back to the Sina Good Health Podcast. Today we've got, once again, William Sturgeon, the guy from Restored Strength. So today we're going to talk about how both of our trainings have kind of evolved over time. So for myself, like I started with just a basic kind of calisthenic body weight type workout where you used a deck of cards and different cards represented different exercises. And I just did that for way too long. And then as I got more comfortable, I kind of got into more traditional weightlifting. And then I started doing MMA. So I was doing more stuff to support that. And then after that, when I was moved away from being able to go to a gym, I started getting into more athletic training, which is like much more about muscle articulation and kind of learning to control your body than just trying to focus on pure numbers. And then more recently, I've been focused on strength endurance and then learning some kettlebell stuff. So William, do you want to take us through kind of how you've grown and evolved with your training?
Yeah. I started with bodybuilding, I would say. So like the bodybuilding, the P90X, that style of training is what I knew because I was in high school and that's what other people did. So I started with bodybuilding, like on and off, never got serious with it. Just kind of did chest day, legs, arms, like typical things, right? More splits. And then I I did that for the longest time for years. And then I got into college, and that's when I had a mentor my first year of school because we were assigned one, and I was asking him, I was like, well, what other things are, like, I wanted to get better. I was like, how can I get better? How can I get bigger? All these questions. And I was wondering what is it that I could do that would be different than bodybuilding. And he told me, he's like, oh, well, there's push pull. And I was like, well, what's that? He's like, well, you do upper body, then lower body exercises in one workout where you mix in the both. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that was as much as he gave me. So then I took that idea and ran with it, and it took me through different avenues. So I went from bodybuilding to powerlifting to kettlebell training, and then I moved into MoveNet style of training, which is more outdoors, nature based. Then found myself back into what I refer to now as Smart Fit. Smart Fit is basically, I train strength, mobility, aerobic based exercises that are resistance, that are done with resistance training, and that's it. So for me, it's, I want to improve the quality of my life and be the strongest, fittest version of myself, and that's what I do now. So there's a long answer to that question.
Yeah. And so one big thing that like I think a lot of people need to keep in mind is just training for longevity. Like like I think in the last podcast we talked about like fitness is a lifelong game. So you need to
Yeah.
uh, like you're saying with the smart fit and stuff, like just making sure that you're functional and you're going to stay that way for the next 60 or however many years.
Yeah, and that's the thing that most people don't understand, and I'm happy that I understood that at an earlier age. So I've been doing this style of functional training for periods of my last 6 years of life. And these are the things that many people, like mid, or I mean young 20s, they don't know that. They're more focused on, like, I want to look good, I want to be this and that. And for me, that was appealing. And then I started understanding the bigger picture of what fitness is. And then I was like, oh, this is not a quick sprint, this is a marathon.
Mhm. Yeah. So, is there anything that you remember about like what makes you want to move on from, you know, bodybuilding to the next thing?
For me, it's a matter of, I always want to learn and I always want to be better. So if there's something that I can be doing that'll make me a better mover of strength or whatever I want to label myself as, I will pursue that. So for me, it's always a matter of, it's not one thing, but it's looking at what works and trying to improve it consistently, because I think it's the overall general principle that we're always going to do some type of squatting, some type of rowing, some type of pushing, some type of deadlifting. So like the principles don't change, but the way that you can manipulate them is always going to change. And that's for me is the ongoing continuum of being better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And for me, I like, I'm, and again, this is hindsight, but like, I know at several points I've been doing the same style of training for probably significantly longer than I should have. And I remember being stuck at the same, like I would get to, I'm lifting X number of pounds and it's across a bunch of different lifts. And then and it's that try to make that one little extra gain, but then everything gets sent back and it's like, and I try to build back up and it's just, I keep going in this small range and it's like, well, Alex, how about you try something else,
Yeah, people get so emotionally attached to what they do that they don't venture off, and I'm guilty of that. I will
Mhm.
openly admit I'm a very stubborn person. I am very opinionated on how I approach things, but I'm also the first person to admit when I'm wrong. Like I don't give a shit if I'm wrong. Like
Yeah.
prove me wrong and I'll be like, "Yep, I'm wrong then." Like I have no egotism to being like I need to always be right, but until I'm wrong, I want to know if what I'm doing is right. So like up until that point, until someone showed me like, "Hey, this isn't the best way to do this, and here's a better way to do it," I'm gonna be like, "Cool, you got me convinced." So for me, it's yeah, the same thing. It's hard to get in our head, but if you keep the idea of being open-minded to certain things, I mean, you're gonna learn a lot from different practices of what we're doing in our industry.
Yeah, and I'm definitely the same way. Like in life in general, for me, I'm not good at following stupid rules, but so like I need to understand why. But I also like you said, if somebody shows me a better way or tells me why this way is better, or whatever, I have zero hesitation dropping the old way. It's like let's just like you said, let's do it the best way we can.
Yeah.
Um, so is there anything people should look out for knowing when you're kind of should try something else or move on?
I mean, if you're plateaued is honestly where it really comes in is like, are you getting results?
Mhm.
Honestly, that's the biggest thing right there is if you want to know if your training's working, are you getting results? That's it. Like you want to get a heavier squat, okay? Your program should do that for you. Your style of training should do that for you. If you want to get, better at moving and having better ranges of motion, your program should be doing that for you. If you're looking at just getting prepared for your first 5K, right? Your program should prepare you for that. So basically, you have to have a way to gauge the progress you're making, whether it be how a movement feels. Like maybe your max amount of push-ups is 10, but at the end of 10, you're gassed. Let's say 3 months of working on push-ups, you can still only do 10, but they're a lot easier. That's progress. You don't always have to measure progress by weights. You should look at it as how skill has improved, how better you feel doing the movement. And I think again, it's a matter of helping guiding people into understanding that you need to gauge with how movement feels and testing and checking progress in order to see you gaining results.
Yeah, and definitely like that's a good point with like I've noticed it with like the movement style training and even in the kettlebell stuff I'm doing more recently, like focusing on how well you perform the technique even when you're fatigued and everything, like that's a really good way to gauge progress.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, is there stuff that you consistently do or integrate, like no matter what other style of training you're doing?
I think for me, it's always going to be fundamental movements. Like I'm always going to do a variation of a squat, whether it's with kettlebells, a barbell, a sandbag. Like I'm going to squat. I'm always going to do some variation of a deadlift, right? Whether it's trap bar, whether it's sumo, whether it's conventional, whether if it's elevated. Like, so for me, I look at the movement patterns that are staples. If I were to say an exercise that's always essential for me to have is some type of kettlebell swing. I think that to me is like one of the most
Yep.
important movements for me to do. So for me, I find that deadlifts are my favorite exercise to do. I like picking heavy shit up and setting it back down. I like being able to do that. I like pressing overhead because my shoulders are healthy enough for it. I don't like doing a barbell bench press because I need to protect my wrist because I'm a massage therapist now. So for me, it's again going back to it. It's about the principles of the movements, these elemental things, and the implement or the tool that I use can vary. I don't care what movement I'm using because it's the movement that I'm creating. So for me, that's always like a non-negotiable is, am I going to squat? Am I going to do some type of single leg work? Am I going to do some type of power core and aerobic based resistance training? Because for me, it's staples that are non-negotiable, and that's my strength, my mobility, and my aerobic based resistance, because that's to me is what's going to help me become a better person. Now, the way I think of it this way, Alex, to answer that question is, I like to think of it as I have a recipe, and the recipe I'm using, I can kind of cook whatever I want, however way I want to do it, but it's always these ingredients that are always going to be there. So those ingredients could be the movements, whether it's squatting, hinging, pushing, pulling, some type of core work, some type of power work, some type of single leg work. Uh, I'm just going to mix them around however way I want. Does that make sense?
I think so. So you started to mention modalities. So can you talk about how in the fitness industry, it's pretty common for people to be pretty dogmatic about their way is the be all end all?
Yep, I am exactly guilty of that. I used to be that way too. I was like, the kettlebell is the only way. If you're doing anything else, you're ridiculous. The barbell's the only way. If you're doing anything else, you're ridiculous. And so on and so forth. I think people really find something that they're good at and they enjoy, where like it brought them a lot of fulfillment, and they've found different ways to use it, and they become really attached to it. And I think it's a benefit, right? Because we need people to specialize and become experts in these modalities of training, because we need the guidance. I think we can all learn from each other. But is there going to be one thing that's going to be an end all be all? Maybe, maybe not, in my opinion. Again, I'm biased. I think it'd be the kettlebell. I think that's one of the most versatile tools that I have. I can do structural integrated therapy with my clients, which is a form of movement integration where we do some type of manual therapy, but also we're dealing with some shoulder issues. Well, let's use the bottom up press to help strengthen those finer rotator cuff muscles. And I can also use that same tool to help a Division I athlete become more explosive, or to squat in a way that doesn't jeopardize the health of their knee. And then I can take it all the way into a group setting where, hey, I can have 6 people doing the same squat, and it's not going to be me breaking my face against the wall being like, how do I get these people to do this? It's pick up the kettlebell and squat. So for me, that's my opinion. That's what I feel. But I'm not going to be like, this is the only thing you need. There's tons of tools you can use. It's just, I have a preference there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So today you've been trying to build up your YouTube channel, and today you posted a video about how you had a realization about practicing what you preach in not ideal situations. So to tie that in with what we're talking about, like we're in a pandemic and gyms are, depending on the state or whatever, closed, or maybe just it's not ideal training situations. So do you want to go on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that if training is important to you, if movement's important to you, if the quality of your health is important to you, you're not going to find a reason not to do it. So I've seen people use water jugs. I've seen people use cans. I've used backpacks. Like if I hadn't had access to it, they're not the same as sandbags by no means, but it's a good supplement in the case that you don't have these tools available. That's why I like having the tools that create your own gym. So the kettlebell, the sandbag, resistance bands. So to your question of I had the realization of practicing things in unideal situations. I feel that for many people, they've been able to be really creative with what they're doing at home with their fitness, because there are people who have found ways. And I think I did the same thing. If I didn't have the equipment and I didn't want to come to my own gym, I was just like, all right, cool. I'm just going to do some calisthenic stuff at home, or I'm going to use my backpack and I'm just going to fill it with a bunch of shit. I can do rows, I can do squats, presses, everything I need to do, because I learned how to use the sandbag. So when it comes to utilizing things of what you have at home, your ideal situation is a gym, because that's a controlled environment. You have the things you need to do the things you want to do. Well, when you're practicing that, when it's ideal and convenient, that's great, right? It's easy to do that. But like you said, certain places are shut down and we don't have access to that. That's when you are tested. And that's when you need to put into action what you've been saying to other people as somebody who enjoys fitness, of like, oh, well, if it's really important to you, you're not going to make an excuse to get it. And then your gym gets shut down. You're like, I can't train anymore because I need a barbell to do the things. No, you don't. You just need to get outside of what your norm is, and make movement a priority again. So for me, it's not about the tool I use. It's about just training and what it makes me and what it does for me. Yeah. So that's kind of how I viewed it with practicing things in an unideal situation, because that's when you're like, oh, the things I've been working on are being tested now, not when the situation is great. It's when the situation sucks and you want to fall back to everything you've done before, because that's the easy thing to do. Well, guess what? That gross feeling in your stomach that you're resistant against, that's what you need to move in towards. And that's where you're going to really see some great changes.
Yeah. And like one of my favorite quotes I've read, and I don't remember who said it, but it's like, a man who wants something will find a way, and a man who doesn't want something will find an excuse. And it just makes me think of like when I was starting to actually reintegrate cardio into my workouts, and I was wanting to do like interval style stuff on an exercise bike, and according to the program I was doing. And it was just really interesting that my brain would fight me so hard to any little stupid excuse.
Yeah. That's it, man. It's an easy thing to fall into that, where it's like, there's these voices that's like, you shouldn't do that, or
Yeah.
hey, man.
And then like, even so, it's like it fights me so hard to get on the bike, and it's like no. And then even when I'm doing the bike, and it's like, oh, you did 15 minutes, that's good enough. And it's like, oh, you did 20 minutes, oh, you finished the song, whatever. And it's like, I think it was during the it was like, it was on like a Wednesday on either the second or third week that I noticed that my brain wasn't fighting me much.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it actually kind of became the part of the workout I was looking forward to, because I had an audio book that I would only listen to when I was on the bike.
It's incentivizing yourself in different ways. Is it like, honestly, you just do the work, and the more you just take action and just actually do it, like, it's shittier to not like to think about it than it is to actually do the thing. And I'm guilty of it. Like, I'm still working on that, don't get me wrong. I by no means, like, when I say these things, I'm not saying I manage them very well. I'm not saying I'm an expert, any of that. I'm just saying I struggle with these things too. I'm practicing and I'm learning as I'm going. I haven't mastered any of these things, but what I have done is I made these realizations, and then I just try to share them with people.
Mm-hmm. So, it's just kind of tying in with the evolution of training. Like, is there any like game changing, like it all makes sense now, kind of revelations or stuff you've learned that you can think of?
Honestly, I it was just these last few months I've been working on a big project, which I've mentioned earlier. It was Smart Fit, and that's my own methodology. That's me creating something that I made myself from the influences of all of my past years of education, both in a formal setting, in a practical setting, and through mentorships and other areas. So I think one thing that's been a revolutionary thing is that everybody's doing the same thing, but they're just doing it differently. And it's about finding what works for you. Like for me, I'm a very creative person when it comes to fitness. I really like being detailed and specific and understanding the whys and hows of what I'm doing. And earlier, what I meant, why what everybody's doing the same thing, everybody's always going to do a squat. Everybody's always going to do a lunge for the most part, I hope. Everybody's going to do a bench press or a push up or a shoulder press. Everybody's going to do a one arm row, bent over row, TRX row. So, like, do you see how, like, it's the exercises are always the same. Sometimes they're going to be different variations of it, but it's the movement that is the staple. And it's about how you manipulate it to your own focus and your own goals. So for me, it was that realization that, hey, I only need a certain amount of exercises in my own categories that I'm always going to go to, and just fluctuating the variation. So I might go 4 months of kettlebell front squats, and then I might do 4 months of barbell back squat, and then I might do 4 months of a sandbag fist loaded squat. And it's still squatting. It doesn't change. You're still going to do these daily movements. So for me, the game changing thing was we're all doing the same things, but we're all just talking about it differently. And we're portraying what we've interpreted this as and how we've understood it and how it's gained us progress. So I think of Dan John, Max Shank, Eric Cressy, all these big names in our industry who have talked about functional training and talked about movement-based training. It's just the same thing, just done differently.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Is there, you want to touch on like the importance of continuing to learn?
I'm a big proponent on continuing education. I'm always learning. I'm always either back in school, like I mentioned, I'm in massage therapy school. I'll do certifications in the meantime. So from things that I find interesting, and you're never going to learn everything. It's always a continuum of mastering your own skills and learning the more in-depth things of what you enjoy. And you're going to learn a good foundation through school and through certain organizations. It's a matter of wanting to improve. You always have to improve. So in order to improve, you always have to learn. And there's always going to be people out there who are smarter than you. And I think that's important. Like I learn from people who are smarter than me because they know either have different experiences and they could share that with me. They've made mistakes that I haven't made yet. They're just a wealth of knowledge of people out there who are just trying to be like, hey, here's what I've learned. Do what you want with it. And I think that's it. I think that's the coolest thing that we can do for a continuing thing, because the body's ever changing. We're always going to have things to learn. And for me, I thrive there. I love learning.
Yeah, and that's definitely like with all the different fields or hats or whatever. For me, like martial arts, there's always going to be a better fighter. Video stuff, there's always going to be somebody who's more creative or more artsy or whatever. And it's like, it's great because then, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said like, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's not a room I want to be in.
Yeah.
I want to be around people who are going to help me be better and help me think objectively. And that's the thing is like, I want, so it's fun to explore and find other people to challenge your thoughts.
Yeah. Do you have any, this is more of a guess, but do you have any guesses about what the fitness industry is going to be learning, uncovering, or focusing on the next few years?
Uh, that's a that's a really good question. So I guess for me, um, it's a matter of I think that we're gonna see a fluctuation of the industry in my hopes, and this is just my hopes, and for
Yeah.
the people that I'm associated with in my networks of people. But I hope to see that the future of our industry becomes more recognizable of how we can be on top of allied health and preventative health. And what I mean by that is the fact that as a coach, we're not just counting reps, we're not just doing things to get people sweaty. There's purpose, there's science, there's education behind what we do. Now, is everybody doing that? No. And that's not what I'm doing. So I don't I don't say that I'm speaking for everybody with what I think of the future is, but from my perspective, from who I work with, from who I want to see the future of our industry, I want it to be looked at more as part of integrated health, where we help people improve their immune system, we help people get off medication, we help people reduce the cost of their insurance claims, we help them reduce the pain that they're having, we help them with preventing PT, chiro visits, all these things. And it's a matter of all of us working together, but making sure that we are doing our best to either manage or prevent that type of illness, whether it be internal or physical, because the power of the body is insane. If you fix your nutrition, if you start training, a lot of shit gets fixed, and it's insane. Not to say that I'm shitting on like medicine and things like that. Like, we still need medicine, we still need doctors, we still need, everybody's working together. I'm just saying that there are options out there, and that the body can definitely heal itself through movement and nutrition, and through proper training, and making sure that you're taking care of your health as a whole. So I hope to see that the future of our industry is recognized in how we could help people improve the quality of their life and not just the way they look.
Yeah, like that's really well put. Because I definitely like. I guess the next question is, and again, this may not necessarily be something you have the answer for, but it's like, as coaches, we want to help people improve their lives and feel and move better and all that, but it's like, how do we? It has to be a cultural shift or from the individual or something, with like getting them to have that buy-in, to want to have that preventative mindset and put the work in. And like you're saying, like, cook in your video, you're like, you're going to cook when you're not tired, or when you're tired from work and all that. And,
Yeah, and it's tough. Like, how do we get other coaches to buy in? Well, everybody's going to have their own view. And I think it's not going to be for everybody. Not everybody's going to agree with this approach, and that's okay, because there's other areas of fitness that need to be done. But in my vector of what I do in the industry, I revolve around my focus on wellness and health, not not performance and aesthetics. I don't give a shit about that. I don't that does not matter to me. What matters to me is finding like-minded people who understand the quality of someone's physical and mental health, and helping them improve it through fitness.
yeah. And I'm trying to think of the words, but that's an approach that's a lot more open and approachable than, like with your traditional bodybuilding, you just get like, all you need is the big three. And if you're not lifting like 1,000 plus from your big
Yeah.
three total, then you might as well just, go home or whatever.
Yeah, it's like people are like, you need to go crazy and you need to do these specific things. It's like, no, you don't. I mean, like, if that's what you want to do, that's cool. But for me and who I work with and what I do in my life, I don't care. I don't care. You can tell me how much you lift. I don't give a shit. I just don't care. I'm not at that point in my life anymore where that's what's important to me. What's important to me is knowing that my quality of life and wellness is what's long term. I want to be able to get up and off the ground when I'm 99.
So if that sounds good to you, well,
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested and they're like, hey man, that sounds cool, or if you want to make a difference in someone's life by helping them, by getting stronger, moving better, and helping them get off medication because you're helping them with proper training and habit changes, then cool. Let's talk with me. Let's do this. Let's do this together. I'm not on this mission by myself. There's other people like us. That's the big thing.
So if you do want to get in touch with William, he's got his Facebook and his restoredstrength.com. We'll put links to those below, along with the video we talked about. So I think that about covers what we wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. That was cool.
Yeah. So thanks for being on the show, and tune in for the next one.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.